If you don't have time to grind and you want to buy a stacked account in 2K with max badges, a nice record, and a high overall, hit my man SportsTNB up. His Twitter handle is on the screen, and you can find the link in both the comment section and in the description. Alright, so today we got Unpopular Opinions LeBron James edition. Oh boy, oh boy. I made my own thread for this one because for some reason I thought it existed already and it didn't. Well, not in any capacity where there was enough replies anyway, so I did it and I got more replies than I bargained for. As a matter of fact, sitting here I have way too many screenshots to cover, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started and try to do them in a timely manner. First one says that you can't compare LeBron James and Michael Jordan because they play two different styles in two different eras of the NBA. Enjoy them both separately because MJ is indeed the best of his era and LeBron is the best of his hands down. You know, even as somebody who made a LeBron James and Michael Jordan comparison video, I actually think this is a really good take. My opinions have not changed, but my perspective has kind of evolved since I made that video. And to be honest, if I could go back, I probably wouldn't make it. Not because I've changed my opinion on that subject, but because, you know, we got to this season, right? The 2019 NBA season, and we had a couple of rule changes. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at in real time just how different the NBA is from the one I was even watching a few years ago, or for some of the players I grew up with. And just in that short amount of time, there's players that I think retired probably like 5 years ago, that if they could have their primes right now in this era, they would really be so damn good, so much better than they actually were. And because the NBA has changed that much in that short amount of time, it's got me thinking about all the debates we have about players across eras and just how impossible it is ever going to be to have a definitive answer to any of these questions. Because at the end of the day, we can crunch all these numbers, we can look at all the footage we can possibly look at, we can take into account everything, and we still won't know how great these players would be in their primes playing at the same time under the same set of rules. We just don't know. We don't know what Jordan's career looks like if he plays in an era where the three-point shot is more important, so he starts attempting more. There's just so many factors to consider that lately I found myself being more like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, where he sees like GOATs of eras rather than like greatest of all times, because I'm just sitting back thinking about when we get, 20 years from now, what people are going to be saying about LeBron James and whoever is the face of the league at that point. Because by then you'll have people who hadn't watched LeBron James and you're going to hear things probably that you couldn't imagine hearing today. So appreciating both in their own eras and what they did in their own eras is it's a foreign thought these days, but it's starting to make more and more sense. Here we have that his run in the 2018 playoffs was the second greatest playoff run by a single player in NBA history. Hakeem in 95 is number one. No, I disagree. I'm still taking Dirk Nowitzki in 2011, and yes, I understand that he said single player, and go look at what Dirk did in 2011 as a single player. I get that he had a better team around him, but he also played 3 legitimate NBA championship teams in 2011. Lakers, Thunder, Heat, those were all title contenders that year. And go look at Dirk's performance against all 3 of them. He dominated pretty much against all 3 of them. 2018 was amazing, but I'm not putting that over a run in 2011 where not only was Dallas not expected to win an NBA championship, but they did it by beating everyone who was expected, and Dirk led that charge. No way. Here we have that LeBron's teams around him were all trash. Look at before and after he was with them. Jordan played on a team that is apparently better than the 16 Warriors. Jordan's legacy is better because he was surrounded by the best players. LeBron took the worst teams and put rings on them. This is actually, this borders on Twitter police type stuff. This is a really, really bad take. First of all, to say LeBron's teams around him were all trash. 2018 was the first time LeBron had a roster around him that was considered below average since when he left Cleveland the first time. So for pretty much a majority of this decade, he was on great teams, he had great teammates. And then saying look at what happened to them when he left them, that's always such a poorly constructed argument because it doesn't take into account anything. Like when he left Miami, it doesn't take into account that damn near the entire roster, not just Wade and Bosh, but the entire roster basically suffered injuries after he left. So that was part of the decimation there. Of course, he left Cleveland last year, which was not even a title contending team anyways. Boston's injuries were definitely part of what let that happen. And then to the Jordan part, go look at Jordan's first 3 title teams before he even had Rodman. Not calling them terrible players, but if some of those guys were playing with LeBron, y'all would be saying the same thing they'll say today. And then back to LeBron, the team that they had in 2017 was bad on defense, but they also had an extremely high offensive rating, and the only team that could really match them in that year's playoffs was the 17 Warriors. Yeah, saying LeBron's teams were just all trash around him, that really borders Twitter police type content. No one wanted to give him the 2018 MVP because Harden hadn't won an MVP yet. He played all 82 games and carried that team through the regular season and finals. People had LeBron burn out and didn't want to give it to the obvious best player in the NBA. Again, I don't agree. Harden definitely deserved the 2018 MVP. The thing about it is whenever we get into these arguments, or back when LeBron was still contending for MVPs, that feels so weird to say. It's been a long time, but that was always the thing. It was like trying to give LeBron the MVP because of the team he had around him, or you know, it was like trying to make it the other players' faults that LeBron had a roster looking a certain way. First of all, in 2018, that team had terrible defense and LeBron was a part of that. It really felt like they limped to 50 wins that season and the 4th best record in the Eastern Conference. Meanwhile, the Rockets won 65 games. They had the highest offensive rating of all time in a time where you had the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant. Harden was a catalyst of that outcome. In short, MVP is not given to players. Most of the time, it's not given to players just for making some struggling effort during a season, and you know the team around them is not doing all that good but their stats are amazing. That's really more of an exception, like that happened with Westbrook obviously once Kevin Durant left. Then he pulled out a triple-double to get that team to the playoffs when people didn't think they were going to make the playoffs that year. That kind of thing happens sometimes, but when you have a team that has 65 wins and you have a player on that team that's being debated as the best player in the NBA, 9 times out of 10 that team is going to win the MVP, or that player is going to win the MVP. Kind of just like how this year, James Harden pulled the Rockets from the depths of hell with all the injuries they had, and he got them to a point this year where if they had beaten the Warriors the other night, they would have been in serious contention for first place in the West. Now that would have been crazy, that might have given him a better argument, but more than likely you're going to end up with Giannis as the MVP and not James Harden. You really cannot penalize players who are having damn near perfect seasons because another guy had injuries on his roster or their chemistry was all messed up. You can't go penalizing MVP frontrunners because of their other guys' struggles. Like, I've never been a fan of that. He was no longer the best player after Game 3 of the 2017 NBA Finals. Of course, you know that this is referencing Kevin Durant's 3 over LeBron James to ice that game and to kill the Cavaliers' chance of making that a series. I'll say that I don't agree, but I will also say I made a video after that finals back in 2017 where I said that the LeBron James era was slowly coming to an end, and I said it specifically because of what people were going to perceive after a shot like that with Kevin Durant, and then it happened again exactly a year later from the same spot. I was basically saying that on the surface it's going to look like the Warriors keep winning, Kevin Durant keeps getting finals MVP, LeBron keeps losing. So I kind of called where we are right now, where the LeBron James era isn't per se over, but it's quickly heading in that direction if you can't tell. And the thing that I said in that video was you were going to get people saying exactly what this tweet says. I said that once KD kept winning, especially if it was at the expense of LeBron, people would start saying, well, he's not the best player anymore, he can't be. However, I don't think that was the line. I don't think the line is Warriors come to the finals with this completely overpowered team and dominate the finals as we should expect, and that's where we draw the line for LeBron no longer being the best player. I don't think that's the reason, and I also don't think that's when he stopped being the best player. Really, LeBron James, at least for now, has stopped being the best player this season. He was the best player coming into this season, but we gotta stay consistent. People didn't want to call Kobe the best player in, what was that, 2005, 2006? 2005 because they missed the playoffs, the team was doing bad. Even though he was putting up amazing numbers, gotta be consistent. LeBron James cannot be the best player this year when the team, we're using words like tank with the Lakers right now. That's not the best player in the NBA. Like MJ, he's actually criminally underrated. Wow, now yeah, that's an unpopular opinion because I've never ever heard that. I've never heard MJ or LeBron be called underrated. The word I would use is underappreciated, sure. Michael is definitely underappreciated today. LeBron has been underappreciated pretty much the whole time he's been in the NBA. You know, now that he's not in the playoffs this year, maybe it's gonna start to give people some kind of perspective that, wow, you know, I really just spent the last 8 years of my life and the NBA's entire storyline kind of revolved around this one player. That's something I was noticing as it was going on, but I think a lot of people are going to start to catch on when we have a different NBA Finals this year, somebody else trying to guard Steph Curry and KD, and LeBron is going to be noticeably absent from this entire postseason thing for the first time in a long time. So underappreciated, sure, but underrated, I've seen LeBron James and Michael in all the GOAT conversations for like the last couple of years, so I cannot say underrated. LeBron had a better case for the 2006 MVP than Kobe or Nash. And you know, this one is interesting. This one is really interesting because for as good as LeBron's case was for MVP, and for LeBron to have finished ahead of Kobe Bryant for the MVP voting in 2006, you never hear LeBron James's name in the 2006 MVP race. It's always Steve Nash or Kobe. The Lakers were a 7th seed with 45 wins that year. The Cavaliers were a 4th seed. It's listed as 4th, but they're actually in the 3rd spot. That's probably has to do with the division rules. So they had 50 wins. And then the Suns are also listed as a 2 seed, but they're actually in the 3rd spot. Again, that's division rules. And they had 54 wins. Now, the interesting thing about this is the argument for Kobe Bryant to have MVP that year is eerily similar to the argument that people would make for LeBron James to have MVP in 2018, which is what we were just talking about. Because both of the arguments sound something like they both put up amazing stats and got a team to the playoffs that would have probably been in the lottery without him. And both of those arguments apply to 2018 LeBron James and 2006 Kobe Bryant. You take Kobe Bryant off of that Lakers team and let Smush Parker and Kwame Brown try to take the Lakers to the playoffs. I don't think so. I don't think 45 wins is happening. I don't think in the Western Conference that team is going anywhere. So that is something very interesting I would like to see. I'd like to see that discussed in the comments, because remember, the playoffs does not apply here, especially because they're in different conferences of different strengths, and the MVP is a regular season award. I would like to see people who always trash Kobe Bryant address that argument specifically, because that's the same argument for basically any time LeBron should have won MVP that they say he should have won MVP but he didn't. Kobe Bryant averaging 35 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. To get that team 45 wins and a 7th seed in the Western Conference is very impressive. So you know I don't agree with giving out sympathy MVPs and penalizing other guys because another guy's team was trash. But if you're also arguing LeBron James 2018 MVP, then you've got to also argue by the same definition Kobe Bryant 2006 MVP. You can argue that LeBron James was higher with a team that wasn't really good either, but the Cavaliers that year were in a conference where the 40-win Milwaukee Bucks got a seed. The 40-win Milwaukee Bucks would have also been just a 10th seed in that year's Western Conference, so clearly more difficult to achieve success in one conference than the other. So let me know how you feel about that. LeBron getting swept in the finals twice are big stains against his legacy. I don't care what team you have around you, you can't get swept in the finals. Well, I'll break this down. First of all, in 2007, I can say being swept does hurt there. Part of the reason they were swept was LeBron James had no shot. Of course, his teammates were not finals material either, so it made it easy for San Antonio's defense to key in on him, but that still did have something to do with him though. The other part is, few people acknowledge that the Cleveland Cavaliers actually swept the San Antonio Spurs in the 2007 NBA season. Now, I'm not saying that counts for a whole lot in the finals, because of course we've seen that before. Playoffs is totally different basketball, completely different basketball. But I'm just saying that to point out that the Cavaliers weren't really in the NBA finals by accident, you know? They were a good team that year. They had 50 wins, they played great defense. So getting straight swept by the Spurs in 2007 is not as excusable as 2018, where I will then say, okay, I don't see how that one is as much of a stain, especially when you consider in game 1, it really looked as if LeBron realized that they weren't going to win that series, so the best he could do was try to not get swept, and he put like all his series energy into game 1. It's one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen. And like, okay, it's one thing to blame teammates when they're missing shots or whatever. Sometimes blaming the teammates is unfair, but okay, damn. J.R. Smith did not know the score at the end of the game. Like, at that point, it's like, okay, there's a difference between, oh, you always blame his teammates, and his teammate didn't know what to do with the ball once he got the rebound. Like, that's a little bit different. And then you look at the 2018 Cavaliers they really shouldn't have even been in that finals. And then you're up against the Warriors, Kevin Durant Warriors. Like, 2018, not a stain. 2007, I believe he deserves more blame than he gets for that, because it is written as the Cavaliers just had nothing going on that season, and that's just simply not true. LeBron did not have a good 2007 finals, and his team did not have a good 2007 finals. He couldn't ever guard 1 through 5. Yeah, it was more like 1 through 4. I think that was always a bit exaggerated, but it was still, his defensive versatility is still there though. There's footage of him guarding like Pau Gasol type power forwards. He could do that in his prime. He could get 1 through 4, but of course you're not going to throw him down there with a prime Dwight Howard, prime DeMarcus Cousins, Or before Achilles, DeMarcus Cousins? Of course not. 1 through 4 though, to be able to do all those at a very high level, that's still great though. That's still very versatile. Not a lot of guys who could do that effectively. Oh, he should have stayed in Cleveland. Should he? I don't know. I think the statement here, yeah, this is probably an unpopular opinion, the one that I just read off. I don't think it's that he should have stayed in Cleveland. I think it's that he should have either retired or he should have went to somewhere where he could still contend. That's what I think. I just think because being in the GOAT conversation, I'm a bit disappointed that he's taken his last years. He basically gambled his last years by going to LA because there was some off the court stuff he wanted to do. I feel like with the potential he had to be the GOAT, I felt like why not still go use these great years that you still have, body still in great condition, you're still playing at best player in the league type levels. Why not go and use that on a team that maybe can contend for a championship? Because in LA, now we have, a couple of things go wrong. That's all it took. A couple of things go wrong. Now you're not in the playoffs. Now the team is, what, are they tanking now? There's that. What if you don't get anybody this summer? You're going to be in a similar situation as this next year. You're never going to contend again or play in the finals again if things go like that. I don't know. I just hate seeing players go out in shitty ways. I hated the way Kobe Bryant went out, and so far I don't like the way LeBron is going out. Here we have he's the best player of all time, but not the greatest player of all time. Those are lists that I wish we discussed more instead of going the greatest of all time, because that list is getting harder and harder to organize. What about the best players of all time? So that doesn't take into account a lot of things that greatest of all time takes into account. So when you talk about best, you're just talking about straight up how they played the game of basketball. On that type of list, you have guys like Steph Curry and Kevin Durant way higher than they are on the greatest of all time list. But even then, is he the best player of all time? Well, he's definitely the most versatile as far as doing so many things at the highest level. Even if you talk about the Kevin Durant player that is a better scorer and has more scoring skills, LeBron still has way more vision than him, definitely a better passer. I don't know, as far as just straight up best, I think you might be able to sell more people on that. It becomes very difficult to argue against. And I think this is the last one I'm going to do. It says that LeBron is the #1 reason that the Warriors got 5 All-Stars, not only by joining the Miami Heat, but by embracing playing with the opponent. He made it okay to look at your opponent as a future teammate. That's why I respect Russ, because he views his competition as such. He don't view them as future teammates. Well, how many of you just watched, I think it was on ESPN, and there was Jim Jackson and Steven Jackson, and part of their conversation was how LeBron James has changed the power in the league, the power that players have, the power that they have with their contracts and just signing for a few years and having total control over their careers. Well, all of that it's so crazy to look at, because when you think about it in a very pretty much direct way, LeBron is almost kind of suffering from what he created. See, when people say that LeBron James created super teams, the problem is that they're struggling on how to actually phrase what they're trying to say. Because LeBron James was not on the first super team. What it was, that whole thing that happened with D-Wade and Chris Bosh, that was the first time 3 guys who were at the top of the league decided to say, okay, we're all going to get together in one summer, while they're all in their prime. That's what he kind of popularized. And then of course signing the short contract so he could go do whatever he wanted, so he could go to Cleveland and then create something there. That's what he popularized, not super teams by itself. But really where we are right now, because again, I've said this before, I feel like a broken record now. Kevin Durant has said before that he felt comfortable doing what he did in Golden State because of what LeBron did in Miami. So yeah, just like Steven Jackson and them were saying, all the power that he has and that he is given to these players to go do what they want. LeBron was just talking about that with Anthony Davis on his show, on that barbershop show, where Anthony Davis is now in that stage where he's taking the power and he's going to leave New Orleans. He's basically forced his way out of there, and he's probably going to control his future from here on out. That right there is what LeBron has made popular. That right there is why the Warriors are the way that they are today. And it's so crazy because probably the biggest reason that he doesn't have more than 3 rings, and probably the biggest reason he didn't have a chance to win more after 2016, was because of a move that he made popular. Players now feel like when they get to a certain part in their contract, they can do what they want with their career, they can go play with who they want, and this whole thing probably does not end with Golden State. I know we dream of the day that parity is returned to basketball, and it's a slim chance that anybody is going to be able to duplicate what Golden State has, because that took a very specific set of circumstances. But especially, it's like dominoes right now. LeBron did what he did, Kevin Durant did what he did, and alongside Kevin Durant doing what he did, that took Steph Curry being open to it, right? Because it was considered Curry's team. So it took him putting his superstar ego and pride aside, which I don't actually think he really had either one, but it took him sharing his spotlight. So what if that's the next evolution in these teams, where not only are they doing what they want, but stars are going to be welcoming other guys, multiple other guys with open arms, and being able to share their spotlight? Because what if the Warriors stay around for a while? That'll really be the only way to ever win, right? Or the only way to ever beat the Warriors is if another team comes around and another superstar says, okay, I'm gonna welcome, I don't know, Anthony Davis. I'm gonna welcome this guy. This is just what we gotta do if we wanna win. On the opposite side of that spectrum, you have the Damian Lillards of the world that say they're not gonna sell out to win a championship, but I have a feeling Damian Lillard is a part of a dying breed. So anyways, that is all I'm going to do for this video. Maybe I'll do a part 2 because there's so many more responses to that. I had way more responses that I did not get to. So if you want to see another one, hit the like button, comment, and sub, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications on future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.